Yeah, so this has been a debate for some time since Ruin came out, and I completely get why. Ruin never actually commits to much of what it said in Secure and Breach, often ignoring it for Ruin's own story. And while I understand it to some extent, it does mean a lot of the information about the base game we get from Ruin, such as the bots no longer need recharge stations, or then maybe Chica, really needs to be taken with a hint of salt. And while I understand it to some extent, it does mean that any information about the base game we get from Ruin, such as the bots no longer need to, recharge hourly, maybe other than Chica, need to be taken with a grain of salt, as Ruin is very willing to change established information whether minor or not. I mention this because it's something that can't be argued, again the biggest example being the charging stations. Since all the charging stations we see are either destroyed or broken in some way, yet the bots are still running around, which completely goes against everything we learned in the base game. And heck, the one time we see an animatronic actually interacting with a charging station, it's Chica being shocked over and over again. Because of this, there isn't really a clear-cut answer that works. And with that, let's get into the 6 Security Breach endings and see which one has the highest likelihood of being true. First one I'm knocking off is the van ending. There is not a single hint to Glamrock Mr. Hippo in Ruin. And then there's the fact that it was very clearly a joke ending. You're not meant to take it seriously. Next one I'm going to knock out, the Runaway ending. My main reason being that Gregory explicitly says he's not at the Pizzaplex at the end of Ruin. So let's...
Cassie, can you hear me? Gregory? Is that really you? I mean, really you. I've been trying to reach you all night. I'm not at the Pizzaplex. Something's trying to trick you. You're a bit late.
So unless you ran away, and yet managed to come back to the Pizzaplex long enough to learn about Mixus and the old Endo, before Vanny got to him, I don't see this one actually being true. Unless you make retcons. Next up, the fire escape ending. The fire escape ending can't happen, because the place isn't lit ablaze, it's more ruined from the sinkhole shattering in on itself. And with it not being even slightly hinted at of burning down, it means the main mode of that ending happening, Freddy lighting the place ablaze, doesn't really mean anything. But with that being said, we got the 3 endings out of the way that couldn't have happened. Let's take a look at the 3 endings that have the most possibility of happening. I'll start with the one I could disprove the fastest. The Burn Trap ending. Now, I know some people are going to say that because it's a CGI cutscene, it has to be the canon ending. And I have something that does bring that into question. I'm going to show you 2 images from that ending, and then in the background, I'm going to have a clip of the Burn Trap boss room playing in Ruin. Do you notice how it absolutely isn't the same? Now, since this is a CG cutscene, they made it with 3D models, meaning they should still have those models around. While saying import them into Unreal and slap them in the world is unrealistic, it's something they should have done if Burn Trap was meant to be the canon ending. If Burn Trap did happen, then it happened in a very different way than what was shown. Because like I said, look at these boss fight images from the cutscene right after the boss fight, and look at the room. If they just couldn't change the room for whatever reason, they could have locked us out of it, but instead, they're telling us to go in there and look around. The burners haven't been used. The building isn't crumbled like it was in the Burn Trap ending. So, Burn Trap didn't happen. I got no idea where the hell Burn Trap is if he isn't here. Especially if he ends up not being the Mimic, even though I do think he is. But this just doesn't work. Another thing to add, right, is the elevator they take in the Burn Trap ending. It is explicitly said to be a one-way trip only. And what you could argue, it's like that so you don't go back up there and then just run away from the boss fight. It's still information we are directly told. And while I did say Ruin changes some information from the base game, usually minor, something like the elevator still working, even when it's poorly built, and it's right next to the sinkhole where the Roxy Raceway collapsed in on itself, it doesn't make sense. Not without, retcons. You'd need about 3 retcons to make it to where Burn Trap does actually work. And since Scott doesn't like retcons apparently, we can't really say it happened. You need a retcon to explain why the Burn Trap boss fight didn't happen, even though it realistically should have happened with everything we've seen. You need a retcon to explain that the elevator isn't one way only. Well, the third thing isn't a retcon. You need to give some clear information on where the hell Burn Trap is. Because as things stand, Burn Trap just doesn't exist in Ruin. And the one little reference he gets is something showing his ending wasn't canon. Yeah, that's right, I guess I should probably talk about these then. So, in the game you can find some collectibles, and these collectibles show off the various different endings besides Princess Quest, something that will be important later, but I'm mentioning it now because it's important to what I'm saying here. So much of Ruin is actively telling us to look at the Burn Trap boss fight area and look at the ending and see, no, it didn't happen. You know, not without those funny little retcon things Scott doesn't like doing. But then again, I should talk about this. So, the Burn Trap ending is the only ending that requires Freddy to have all 3 upgrades from the 3 main bots. And they're still shown to be broken in the same way that they were in the base game. What with Puppy, Monty, Speaking of Evil, Chica, and So Blind They're Willing to Change in an Instant Roxy. However, the next 2 endings we're going to get to have the ability to have Freddy with all 3 upgrades when you go into it. And heck, you can even enter the 2 endings before getting Monty's upgrade, but he always shows up with the claws in the cutscene. Realistically, I don't think the upgrades matter that much to the endings and the canonicity, as shown in the example I just showed. Again, you will always have Monty's claws going into that cutscene even if you didn't pick up Monty's claws. And Monty's claws are a whole other mess, but that's for a different day. This just leaves the 2 ending I see having the most possibility of actually happening. Vanny Disassembled and Princess Quest. To start with, let's go back to the clip earlier of Gregory having a friend with schematics.
Your friend has access to the building maps. Just follow the instructions.
There are one of 2 options for who it is. If you believe Prototype is a different bot, then it could be Freddy or Vanessa. And if you think the sword through the machine means that Princess Quest wasn't beat, then yeah, Vanny Disassembled makes the most sense. But if you think the sword being through the machine means it was conquered or beaten, and Gregory's friend is Vanessa, then there really isn't much wiggle room here because Vanessa has to be redeemed. And there's only one ending where Vanessa is redeemed. And if you're like me and under the belief that Prototype is just Shadow Freddy from the base game, which if you think CGI means canon, then it's literally impossible for both Freddy to be ripped apart and Burn Trap to happen. So no, it doesn't mean the CGI cutscenes are canon. They literally can't happen side by side. Then with that being considered, then yeah, Princess Quest makes perfect sense. That's what I think Phaser Blast is here for. It's to point to the only endings with Phaser Blast being in them, being the canon ones, while also showing the Burn Trap boss room not lining up with the Burn Trap ending, which shows it didn't happen. However, now we're here with the 2 endings, it basically comes down to who you think Gregory's friend is in Ruin. If it's Gregory, then Vanny can be killed off with no issues and Prototype gets to be a 100% different bot. If you think it's Vanessa, then Princess Quest kinda has to happen. Bad audio quality, this is coming back in from the editing booth, you know how things go. But I did forget to mention that throughout the Pizzaplex and Ruin there are many different Vanny sigils. This can come down to one of 2 things. Either Vanny is still alive, although Princess Quest kind of gives an excuse for it to still be alive while having Vanessa around. Along with B7 too, thank god that thing exists, right? Yeah, go Bucks. Or, it's just reused assets, because Steel Ball likes to reuse assets a lot. Like, say, the tally marks are all over Bonnie Ball, it's one asset just slapped all over again, so tally marks probably don't mean anything. Anyway, yeah, just cutting in to say that, thanks, bye! If Princess Quest didn't happen, then this Freddy missing his head would mean nothing because that only happens in the Princess Quest ending, meaning it's probably a different bot. Before I say which I think happened, let's recap all the other endings we have. That ending is just a joke and there's no Mr. Hippo. The bad ending was required too much to happen off screen to make it work. The Pizzaplex isn't burnt down so it isn't the fire escape ending. The Burn Trap ending would require at least 2 retcons and 1 heavy explanation. And the last 2 endings that had the highest chance of happening basically boil down to whether you think Prototype is Shattered Freddy or not, or if you think Gregory's friend in the basement is Glamrock Freddy or not. But since I do think Prototype is Shattered Freddy, I'm gonna go with Princess Quest. If you wanna know what I think Princess Quest is about, go watch the last video as it also helped in my decision making here. Now that's where I would end it, but I do think something shifted during development. I have 2 main points of evidence for this. First is the poster of Ruin. Take a look at it. These black spots on the floor? Could be nothing, but it does look like ash, to me at least. And then there's the melted plastic on Chica's face. This is clearly melted plastic and not cheese, meaning probably a fire happened. So what happened here? Unless VIP ending was meant to be the original ending, and I really doubt it, we need to take a look at the port that came out less than 6 months before Ruin. True ending Burn Trap. That is something unique to the port, and while the track True Ending did exist in the base game, it was also used for the van ending, so I'm not sold on it meaning anything. But this code is strange, especially since the port came out just a few months before Ruin, and since Ruin is a sequel to the base game, it would have to tell us what happened in the base game. But from what I can guess, I am not stating this as fact, but 100% saying I am guessing here, Steelwool didn't know the whole Mimic twist. Once they were told, realized the Burn Trap ending wouldn't really work, we'll also need to shove the Mimic in the DLC. So they changed the ending to Princess Quest or Disassembled, once they knew the whole story what was going on. I'm gonna just play that same clip I've done in every FNAF video so far.
So as we're building the game, I get an email from Scott, and he says, "Hey, put this stuff in the game," and I look at it all, I examine it as a producer would do, and I say, I have no idea what any of this means. And he goes, "Yeah, put it in the game."
And what this says about Scott was that he wasn't really overseeing the development of Security Breach too closely, especially when he was willing to just throw random Easter eggs at them and not explain what the hell they meant. It would not shock me if all they knew about the Mimic is that it was an AI replicating William Afton, but didn't have access to everything like Edwin or the epilogues of Tales. If it was true, then a lot of weird decisions in the base game do make a lot more sense. Hell, going back to Help Wanted even. But like I said, this is me taking a guess, not stating as fact. But it could just be bad writing, who knows. Thank you for watching and listening to me ramble. Bye!